good to have you with us on this edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, tonight we start with the focus on Bihar, a state that is currently reeling under two different kinds of challenges and disasters. The flood, which has impacted 10 districts of Bihar, and of course the pandemic that the rest of the country is dealing with. But for Bihar, in the last 2 weeks, things have suddenly worsened as cases have spiked on a daily basis. The unlocking hasn't spelled good news for Bihar, and the fact that the healthcare infrastructure is in shambles is only making it more difficult. Now, I'm going to first tell you about these two challenges, and then the conversation that we will have tonight is about the future for Bihar's government. Elections were to be held later this year around October. Now, how ready are we? Can this be done in the middle of a pandemic where social distancing, health, hygiene is of utter importance? Can we really have an election in a state like Bihar with campaign rallies, door-to-door campaigning, voters queuing up outside polling stations? And if we do, what precautions, what kind of machinery, preparation will be required? How big a challenge will it be? Should we simply look at postponing these elections? That's going to be the big talking point. But first, let me tell you why it is important to have this conversation. The big challenge for Bihar in this pandemic, and much more difficult for Bihar than some of the other states, is because of the healthcare infrastructure. The government has right now beds for 8,924 people. The number of doctors are also very less in terms of what they may need for the population of Bihar. 3.94 of the state budget is usually allocated for health sector, which isn't enough for a state like Bihar. 43% of the sanctioned strength of doctors is currently vacant. 29% of the nurses available in government hospitals. Only 28% of lab technicians are available in government hospitals. 62% of the households don't have functional bathrooms. 57% households don't even have a drainage system, and so on and so forth. It's actually, as per NITI AAYOG state ranking, second last when it comes to the health index. So when the cases spike in Bihar, it becomes a big problem. In fact, let's see how the cases have spiked since this pandemic hit us. Now, up till May, Bihar was actually doing relatively better. But as of May 1st, they had reported around 466 cases. Then by May 15th, it had gone down to about 1,000 cases. By June 15th, a month later, the cases had reached 6,662. Now, here is where the things started to turn around. On July 1st, active cases in Bihar went up to 10,000. The total reported cases by July 15th, they had hit 20,000. And by July 23rd, the cases had hit almost 32,000. Look at that rise just in the last 2 weeks. And a series of reports are actually coming out about story after story of horror, about not enough medical staff being present, the facilities not being good enough. Add to that the impact of the floods. And then let's ask the question, can we really hold elections in such a scenario? So without wasting any further time, let me say good evening to the panelists who are joining us right now. Let's say good evening to the two former CECs. And we're going to start with a conversation with Mr. O.P. Rawat, former Chief Election Commissioner till just a short while ago, and also Dr. SY Quraishi, also a former CEC who's been on our conversations earlier as well. Always a pleasure to have him. We also have Dr. ALOK of the JDU, Dr. Nawal Kishores of the RJD, and MANISHA, PRIYAM political analyst, joining us this evening, along with a health expert, Dr. Nafis Faizi, who is an assistant professor of community medicine at the Aligarh Muslim University, well versed with the state of affairs in Bihar. But first, Mr. Rawat, let me start with you. I know we have you just for a very limited amount of time. To your mind, Mr. Rawat, can elections be held in Bihar during a pandemic?
Not only pandemic, in fact, flood situation is also very grim there, and all these two factors will have to be kept in mind. But I'll just give you an example. In the peak of pandemic in Madhya Pradesh, when wheat harvesting was on in the month of March, April, and May, they created a record. Madhya Pradesh surpassed Punjab in delivering wheat on support price to government. For the first time, Punjab has become second and Madhya Pradesh is on top. So the message from the people is loud and clear. Pandemic, floods, or any calamity, we will work for our state, for our country, and we can do everything. That message, if taken in right spirit, I think everything gets resolved. So election commission and all those stakeholders who are in elections should keep these things in mind without risking people's lives, without risking anything serious happening to people. If they are facilitated, I think people will come out with flying colors.
Okay, Mr. Rawat, from some of the comments that the Election Commission has made right now, they're actually, considering increasing the number of polling stations so that the crowd at each polling station goes down. They're also talking about, rallies or campaigning, which will need a specific protocol. But my question is very simple. Voting is the last thing. Before that, the campaign season itself becomes a tough task to manage. Right now, already we are struggling with implementation of the lockdown norms. Do we really have that kind of an administrative machinery to implement social distancing during campaigning?
Actually, South Korea has given a template to all democracies across the world. They held their parliamentary election on 15th of April at the peak of the pandemic, with a record voting of 66.2%. And there has been enough time for us to plan as to what will be done in Bihar, because Bihar is not suddenly coming up. Every 5 years we have to hold elections. So everything is known, and pandemic is known, flood situation during monsoon is known. So we could have planned everything, and I think Election Commission has done a lot. They have increased the number of polling stations to 106,000. And other things are also in the offing. So I have full faith that Election Commission shall take a very rational decision and carry it out.
Mr. Quraishi, do you agree with what Mr. Rawat is saying? Do you think this can be done on ground? We can implement social distancing and all of our other norms while we hold elections?
Yes, I heard Mr. Rawat
social distancing.
Because the line was disturbed. I could hear
yes, the question to Mr. Quraishi.
Yeah, but what I heard was, and I entirely agree with him, 33 countries in the world have conducted elections in the last 4 months. Now, if they can do it, India cannot. That is unimaginable, because we are the world guru in elections and we have 70-year-old experience. And the elections are still 4 months away. And already he mentioned about South Korea as a model, as a template. And that is the one model which Election Commission of India has been examining, because we have heard their statement. And surely we would have learned a lot from them and from other countries like Poland also. And now very soon on the 5th of August, there is going to be an election in Sri Lanka, closer home. We'll keep close watch on that also to learn something from them. And I'm sure we can take care of the safety norms, the social distancing and everything. That's all already, I think, it's all being planned already.
Mr. Rawat, what kind of additional forces deployment, additional officials on ground would we need to ensure that the COVID protocol is followed? Already, Bihar is a state that sees multiple phases of election, a large number of campaign rallies. It's a big event. And to top of it, we will also have the pandemic. Now, to your mind, what kind of an additional deployment will be required for that? Okay, I think we've lost that line with Mr. Rawat. Dr. Quraishi, you want to take that question?
Yes. The additional force required will be to the extent we are going to have additional polling stations. Already the Election Commission has indicated its mind that to keep the polling booth less crowded, they'll have to create more polling stations, about 60% more polling stations are being created, which means 60% more polling staff will be required, 60% more security apparatus will be required. So to that extent, the answer to your question is yes, more security will be required, but not because of pandemic and the forming queues and all that. We have Bihar police, we have armed police, we will have paramilitary forces, and all together. So maintaining social distance will not be any extraordinary problem for them.
Okay, now I say this, and let me bring in our other panelists as well, because just today we had an interesting comment coming in from the AIMS director, Dr. Prabhat Kumar Singh, who's director of AIMS in Patna and Bihar. He said that when there was a lockdown, things were good, but now it has become worse. Infection has spread more in the state since lockdown was removed because people have become relaxed. Number of cases in the state will increase. There is around 20 to 25% positivity cases. So here is the AIM director himself saying that people are not following norms. They have become too lax in their attitude, which is why we are seeing a spike in cases. Then in that sense, are we really ready? Are people ready? Is the administration ready to implement the norms when there is an election at hand? Every day we see series of VVIP violators, netas from across the country actually breaking the norms themselves. Are they going to keep it in mind? Will Election Commission have to then rein them in, keep reminding them about the COVID rules as well? Some of the questions that I have in mind. Let me actually bring in Dr. Nawal Kishore. Dr. Nawal Kishore, your party isn't very convinced with the idea of having elections at this time. Why is that?
Yeah, first of all, in a democracy, the most important person or the most important stakeholder is people. And now the people are at the risk in the influence of. Our concern is whether what's the priority? Priority of today is to control the pandemic, to save people from it. And that is the reason why we say that election can wait. But the pandemic is not going to wait. Therefore, we should first concentrate on controlling the pandemic and saving the people, in which Bihar government has miserably failed. They have failed in managing the migrant labor. You must remember, in the month of April and May and June, they have failed in managing the problem of migrants. And how can we expect that those people, there are 8 crores of voters, and how will you maintain the social distancing? How will you maintain the campaign that is most requirement of election? During election time, the leader, the party, the workers are allowed to move around and convince people about the failure or about the party. And how is it going to be possible? All things cannot be done in such a circumstances. You must have seen what is the condition of health infrastructure in Bihar. How my hospitals are badly managed. How the administration is badly looking after. So in this rising, Bihar is becoming the hotspot, not only in this country, but it is going to make some kind of record in a month or two. In such a circumstances, I think we have already given a memorandum along with 9 parties that election can wait. And first of all, the priority of the government, whether it is a state government or central government, it must take into consideration that how we can control the pandemic and save the people. We should not risk common man at the cost of just holding election and just power playing. So that is our position, that we would like that first, we are not afraid of going into election.
Okay, Ajay, ALOK, respond to this. And in fact, okay, RJD says not afraid of going into elections. I do have a question for you, Mr. Nawal Kishore, on your own party leaders following the norms, but I will come back to in just a bit. Let me get Ajay ALOK to respond to what you've said. Ajay ALOK, from just about 6,000 cases on 15th of June to the situation which is right now and the significant rise from 6,000 to 31,000 in month and a half is a concern. Now, if you say in such a scenario, let's start holding rallies and start door-to-door campaign and get people out for voting, how will our infrastructure for healthcare really manage it?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, we are not thinking of elections right now. We are not concerned about election as far as Bihar government goes. Bihar government is not concerned about election. That is not the job of the Bihar government. That is the job of election commission and they are taking care of it. As a government, we are more concerned about containing the infection, containing the virus. Now, as far as my friend was saying certain things that election cannot be held on bodies and we have to think of people, pandemic and all blah, blah, blah. Well, here he was his leader who yesterday only went for a campaign trail and he was taking the pretext of helping the poor in floods. And he was moving with 50 full vehicles of supporters. And in the way, he was being garlanded by not less than 100 or 50 supporters. Now, what you will call this? Helping the poor or spreading the infection? That is one question to ponder for all your viewers, that this is the kind of leadership and this is the kind of opposition what we are facing today. Our main concern as a political party right now is to keep our party carriers charged without harming them, without taking them a single iota percent of risk of infection. That's why what we have started doing, that we have started doing virtual rallies. We have started doing Facebook lives. We are using all kind of social media platforms where we can connect to our workers and just tell them that, look, this is the situation. Elections are around in November, but I am for sure convinced and pretty convinced that in the month of September, when elections are due for notification, Election Commission will take into account for everything, like what they have done today. Like by-polls in Bihar have been postponed till 7th of September, and they are taking the decision about the remaining 57 seats in the coming day or two. So I'm pretty sure that in the month of September, the Election Commission, along with all the agencies, will gauge the situation in Bihar, whether it is suitable or whether it is feasible to conduct elections or not, and then they will decide. But as a political party, we are always 24/7 ready. But the difference is we don't want to risk our people, so we are not going for door-to-door campaigning right now. We are not going for any massive rallies right now. What we are doing is social media campaigning, Facebook Live, all sorts of communication, talking to through cell phones, making use of different kind of video apps. All the basic necessary technology is what we are using. And as far as Bihar government goes, our chief minister goes, he's not bothered about elections. What he's concerned, how to treat people, how to give relief to the people in floods, and how to manage the things, and how to take control of the situation. This he knows very nicely.
Yes, but Ajay, Alok, I know you say that you're not even thinking about elections because your priority right now is dealing with the pandemic. But the stories being reported from various hospitals and COVID care centers is completely different. In Patna, it was reported the dead bodies were just lying about in Bihar's largest hospital. In Sivan Sadar Hospital, a woman was left simply unattended there, with people posting pictures of it, but there is no official available to really take care of a patient like that. In Bhagalpur's hospital, an 80-year-old died waiting for doctors to come. Story after story of horror, whether it's understaffing, lack of medical staff, proper facilities, even food being made available to those who are in these centers. The fact that in many parts you have just one hospital catering to 5 districts. The situation is already going out of your control.
I don't think the situation is going out of control, ma'am, because right now we have 31,759 cases reported till 6 p.m. in the evening, and the recovery has gone up to 22,300 approximately. So active cases in Bihar remains at 9,800 or 900. Out of these 9,800 and 900, I will say that less than 1% are in ICU, are requiring ICU or intensive oxygen therapy. Now, the death rate in Bihar is relatively very low, touch wood, by the grace of God. But whatever stories you are telling of the hospitals, yes, I do admit that there have been lapses. There have been lapses on the administrative part. And definitely, the government is looking into it. Like today in Patna, today and yesterday, our health minister himself visited to all the hospitals, ensuring that these kind of mistakes are never repeated again. See, you have to be a constant check. You have to be keep on monitoring the situation at all given point of time, because you cannot afford to be lax. That's what the minister, chief minister, and the administration is taking care of, that the management has to be done, the execution has to be done by the lower part, the one who is in the hospital management staff. They should be monitored carefully. We have installed now CCTV so that we can monitor doctors. There was a strike in AIMS by the nursing staff, which was called off immediately. All these things are being taken care of. But then also we are humans. I mean, the lapses keeps on happening, but our job is to improve the lapses and keep on moving on it. We cannot crib on lapses. Whatever wrong has been done has been done. We are just trying to focus that it should not be repeated again. And how much what our target is, that we should be able to provide care to every patient.
Dr. Nafis Faizi, do you want to comment on this? Can Bihar's healthcare infrastructure afford another big spike in cases? The government is already looking at partial lockdown in the urban areas, stepping up on the healthcare infrastructure. But if we say people can go out and campaign, people can go out and vote, additional forces have to be brought in, they will have to be housed there, travel, food, logistics, will lead to another round of spike in cases. Can we handle that?
Oh, hi. So Harry Potter, in the Goblet of Fire, there is a sentence that times like these bring out the best in some and the worst in others. We have to realize that this is not the story of COVID alone. The resilience dividend of a health system, which is the ability to respond during good times as well as bad times, is very, very bad in Bihar. And this has been going on for years together. Let me tell you one stark figure that we do not know about. The infant mortality rate of Bihar is 48, which is similar to Sudan and Swaziland and is the 34th worst in the world. We are talking about a state, and then the pressure is very high on that, on the infrastructure, which is in dire straits, which has shortage of physicians and specialists to the tune of 75%. And all these are government data that I talk about. 50% sub-centers are not functioning, 60% PHCs, 9% CHCs. And this is the 12th largest country in the world in terms of population. If Bihar was a country, it was 12th largest, to the tune of Japan. South Korea, the country which we'll often talk about, has half the population of Bihar and was excellent in its COVID response in the first month through test, treat, and trace strategy. Now, we at this kind of infrastructure cannot really fight the battle the way others are fighting. And we need to understand that as well. The recovery rates are high because 43% of Bihar is less than 15 years of age. 58% of Bihar is less than 25 years of age. It is the youngest state in the whole country. That's a very good plus point for us during the time of COVID. But in terms of number of beds, we will fall short if the R0 does not decrease in the near future. Elections are, in November, but I'm talking about the immediate future. That we have a lot of problems right now. The testing rate is very, very low. There's 89% of Bihar's population is rural. So these are hard to reach areas. There are unreached people. We do not know enough about them. And most importantly, and this is something that the central team also commented, we need to have death audits from Bihar now. We need to know that the people who are dying otherwise, do they have COVID or not? Did they have COVID or not? So that we understand and take due precautions during their burial and cremation as well. Because the non-COVID healthcare all over the world and also in Bihar has been affected. We don't really know why people are dying. We need to do that immediately. So death audit is something that needs to be done. And we have to ramp up testing and our infrastructure as much as we can. That's what
Yes, the testing, of course, is far lower than what one would want. India itself is testing much lower than the ideal situation, but Bihar is lagging behind than the other states as well. Now, Dr. Quraishi, that's one of the other points that I wanted to ask you about. The fact that I know in many other parts of the world, elections have been held. Korea to Poland examples have been given, but they don't have the same challenges that we do. They have a good healthcare infrastructure. It's not the kind that we have right now, which is already crumbling as the cases go up. We've just reached 31,000 cases in Bihar now, and look at the state of affairs. Now, how do we compare it? Add to that the fact that if we are to hold elections, last time, if I'm not mistaken, when elections were held in Bihar in 2015, about 3.27 lakh personnel were deployed to ensure the elections go on smoothly. That's additional people who will have to come, travel, they will have to be housed somewhere. keeping in mind social distancing. Their logistics can't be the regular ones either. Now, is that challenge something that the Election Commission will have to factor in?
I already mentioned to you, all it needs is a little more staff, because they are planning to have more number of polling stations to minimize the crowding at a polling booth. And approximately 60% more polling stations will be created, for which more staff will be required. Of course, that is a challenge, but that is a challenge which the Election Commission faces and deals with all the time. Considering now, in the normal times, we do not deploy more than 25% of the school teachers. Now, at the time when all the schools are closed and all the teachers are available, the number can be double, number can be 3 times. So finding that staff will be difficult but not impossible. And in any case, it has to be done, because conducting elections is a constitutional responsibility. In COVID, election in India can be postponed only if an emergency is declared, and an emergency is declared for 2 regional threat and internal rebellion. So will come under either of the 2 definitions. And we are dealing with COVID. Elections are still 4 months away. Surely Election Commission they know the entire picture, and they'll come up with the safety protocols. And in any case, polling day is just a one-day affair. The fact that people are crowding the markets, that's a daily affair. That is how it is spreading. Now, if there is a total lockdown and there's a curfew-like situation, one can understand. The fact that the state has opened up already, so one day of election, which will be much more regulated than the market and the mandis. So I don't think we should worry too much about it.
Okay.
Election Commission is smart enough to conduct it, yes. But what came to me as a surprise, normally it's the government of the day which may have an interest in prolonging its life by postponing the election. The demand coming from opposition is something which comes to me as a surprise, and I would like to understand what is behind that thinking.
Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Nawal Kishore that question in just a bit, but let's bring in MANISHA PRIYAM as well. MANISHA PRIYAM, your thoughts? I've had 2 former CCs on this show who say that the show must go on, elections must be held, for the democracy to continue, and Election Commission is capable enough to ensure that it can be smoothly carried out. Do you think Bihar is ready for that kind of a challenge, considering it's already dealing with 2 disasters on ground? MANISHA PRIYAM, I'm really sorry, but we're not able to hear you at all. I'm going to ask the team to try and fix that audio line with you so we can and the viewers can actually hear you. Mr. Nawal Kishore, do you want to elaborate a little bit more about what Dr. Quraishi was saying? Why is it that the party doesn't want elections right now? This Friday we're having issues with technology, is one after the other. Happens especially in today's day and age of digital era and work from home. AJAY, ALOK, why do you think it is that your party is all right with holding elections but RJD is not?
See, it's not a matter that my party is all right with holding the election and RJD is not. So I understand this thing very clearly. The kind of situation right now in the month of July we are in, now, if the spike is going to continue for the next 2 months, no sane person will think of elections. What we are saying that as a political party, we should be ready for the election because it's a constitutional necessity. And we are getting ready for the election if it happens, if everything remains in control. But the problem with RJD, Congress and other opposition in Bihar is that they lack the substance to fight election. They don't have a leader. They don't have a setup. They don't have people's confidence. They know what happened to them just a year back when they were completely wiped out. Now, with all the good jobs being done, they are not ready to face the electorate right now. So they want this election should be postponed. But in our case, we are just concerned that if the election has to happen, it will happen. And that is the job of the election commission to decide, not us. As a political party, as a responsible political party, we should be ready that if there is an election, we are ready. If there is no election, then also we are ready. We are always into 24/7 mode, charging our party, and fortunately, our alliance partner BJP is also doing the same. So it depends what is the situation remains in September. Let's hope the vaccine comes. Let's hope everything starts getting improving. Even not for the election's sake, for the country's sake, let the situation improve. That's the most important thing.
No, I understand what you're saying, but there are many who also have raised the concern of low voter turnout. Already we've seen that election after election, the voter turnout even for Bihar has actually come down. Is that also a concern? I mean, what's the point if we say, okay, let's hold elections, but people are too scared to come out. People are too scared that they may risk themselves and get infected, and so they don't come out to cast the vote. AJAY, ALOK?
See, if you analyze the election, last 3 elections, if you analyze, you'll see that the voting turnout has been increasing in Bihar or in, say, the whole of the Hindi heartland. Like in 2019 Lok Sabha elections, the voter turnout was close to 67%. Same in the Vidhan Sabha, it went up to 69%. We have always seen that there's a less voter turnout in the urban area as compared to the rural areas. It has been a trend all the time. So my concern is not about voter turnout. What I am concerned right now, that if at all election will happen, it has to happen in a new framework, in a new setup, with a technological background, with a technological base. And for that, every party should be ready, because this decision has to be taken by the election commission and no one else. And if it says that yes, election will happen and we'll have to go into election, then we should be battle ready from now. We shouldn't be getting battle ready in the month of September. That's what my party, my alliance thinks, and that's why we are all into digital mode. We are all energizing ourselves, seeing how we can manage things, how we can mobilize things, because at the last moment, we don't want to be that kind of a student who turns on the table when the exams are just coming up. We want to be prepared from earlier. That is the difference between us and the opposition, and they are not prepared at all.
Okay.
They don't have a leader. They are clueless.
Perhaps why they don't want elections to be held right now. Now, let me also tell our viewers what is it that the Election Commission is actually planning, and it's been, widely reported in many parts, and we've put it together. Also, this is what the current CEC actually said in an interview to the Week magazine, that about usually we have 1,500 voters in each polling booth. They're planning to reduce it to 1,000, so that will take care of the crowding that happens and ensure that there are lesser chances of crowding to take place. Effectively, that would also mean that they will need about 33,000 additional polling booths, and those polling stations are already being identified. Almost 30 to 33,000 polling stations have been identified. About 1.8 lakh additional logistical setup also has to be seen. Additional EVMs and VVPATs will have to be brought in. Postal ballots for voters who are above the age of 80, that's something that has already been decided. So these are some of the things that are being looked at. Now, Dr. Quraishi, one other question that I have for you, because the Election Commission's other job is to rein in the netas from breaking the rules. You already have, campaign rules, the code of conduct which is there. Now we will also have the COVID rules which exist already. Now, if any neta campaigning violates social distancing, goes and starts interacting with people, gets into a crowd, doesn't wear a mask, those kind of violations, will that also be something that the Election Commission should look into, or do we just leave that for the local police to act, to take action for? Because then I'm not too sure if there will be a fair enough job done.
Yeah, Tanvi, let me remind you that during the Election Commission enforces all the laws of the land which are not even election laws. For instance, you cannot deface walls of the houses. Wall paintings are not allowed. It is not an election law, it is a municipal law. There are regulations about rallies, how many cars you can use. These are environmental laws, not election laws, but election commission enforces all the laws of the land, and therefore election commission will surely be concerned about all the regulations and laws and rules about COVID also. Like it enforces every other law, surely they will not leave it to chance, they will not leave it to the sweet will of people or the local administration. Surely election commission will control it with a heavy hand. And let me tell you, they will do a better job of it than the administration does nowadays.
Okay, all right. No, I understand what you're saying. Dr. Faizi, let me bring you in here as well. We have 4 months of time. Can we look at, perhaps bringing in additional central support for the Bihar government to start preparing? Because whatever said and done, the cases will spike. The cases are already spiking, and you will perhaps have a situation where it goes up further because of floods. People have been displaced, and thousands of them have already, had to move. Can we use the next few months to step up on our healthcare infrastructure and ensure we are ready around the campaign and election time?
There are a couple of concerns right there. One is that, okay, say that we ramp up, we come out of denial, we accept that, through every means possible, we'll bring in the human resources through innovative means, like Maharashtra said. But we need that now. In fact, the postgraduates who passed in the month of May in Bihar, they are still to be recruited in the system. We have these people. So on the ground, we need to work day and night now. And we need to start supporting the health workers through economic, psychological, and most importantly, the ones who are in managerial positions. Also, the two concerns that I have is, one, we need to work on flood relief now. History tells us that during pandemics, malaria takes the maximum toll of lives. There's a huge flood going on. And I don't know whether we are prepared to fight the vector-borne diseases and malaria that will come up now. And this must be started right now before the end of the rainy season. The other problem that we have is this is the first spike of COVID. I'm afraid that in the month of September, and this is what big epidemiologists like JP Mulial have been saying, that we could have a second wave in August, September, but only time will tell. But now we have to work on war footing without blaming anyone, and everybody has to actually work on this because the situation is actually pretty bad in Bihar. Yeah.
Okay, in fact, I believe we've got Mr. Nawal Kishore back with us. Mr. Nawal Kishore, I had another question for you. I understand you say that the healthcare infrastructure is not ready, situation in Bihar, COVID-wise, is not good, and so we should not hold rallies or elections. But my question to you is, your own party's netas are already breaking the rules, are already violating the lockdown norms. Shouldn't that be your own first concern before you start questioning the government? You can't even manage your own people. What will we do if there are elections?
No. See, if you look at the situation of Bihar, and if you look at our party have been continuously suggesting the government that they should take certain norms. And if you look at the month of April, May, and June, the Bihar government was in denial mode that it is not going to come. He is talking of lapses. This government is full of lapses in health infrastructure every year. You will not. We have not forgotten the case of Muzaffarpur, where hundreds of children died. So we know what is the preparation of health infrastructure. The country also knew the report of NITI AAYOG, also know the report of Health Mission. Every report say that Bihar is in a failed mode, and the Chief Minister himself, he is not coming out for more than 100 days. He is there in his home. His ministers, the minister who have repeatedly failed, the Mangal Pandey as a health minister has repeatedly failed.
Mr. Nawal Kishore, you're not answering what I asked you. What about the responsibility of your party? Your party leaders, including Tejasvi Yadav, went ahead and violated a lockdown norm. He himself has been booked by the police along with Rabdi Devi and your state party president. Along with that, we've seen Shambhunath Yadav, an RJD MLA who actually went and played cricket and was the chief guest at this entire event. Now, how do you have the moral authority to question anybody else when your own party is not leading by example?
No. When Bihar is suffering from flood, do you want also to be at home like chief minister? Do you want every political leader in Bihar to behave like Nitish Kumar, who is not ready to listen, who is not ready to acknowledge the situation, which is full of pandemic? It's not only one pandemic. That is not only corona. There is also pandemic called flood. People are suffering for flood. People are suffering for food crisis. You know that. The people migrant labor who came to Bihar, they are suffering on the ground. And there are a lot of cases in law and order. So if Bihar is suffering from so many things, you want every leader to be inside their home. The chief minister has failed on many fronts. And
I am not saying the leader has to be inside home. The leader has to follow the same rules as the common man. No, Mr. Nawal Kishore. The leader has to lead by example. आपके नेता ही अगर social distancing नहीं मानेंगे, तो बाकी बिहार के लोग क्यों माने?
नहीं, हमारे नेता पूरा सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग फॉलो कर रहे हैं और जो मास्क का क्राइटेरिया वो भी फॉलो कर रहे हैं। यहाँ पर मामला जो है वो सरकार के असफलता का है, फेलियर का है, कुव्यवस्था का है। उसको आपको ध्यान देना चाहिए कि आप जिस हॉस्पिटल में डॉक्टर को ठेले पे लेकर पहुंचाया जाता है, जो कोविड डेडिकेटेड हॉस्पिटल है उसमें पानी भरा हुआ है। आप बात करते हैं, वीडियो ऐसे आ रहे हैं जिसमें कि पेशेंट खुद अपना ऑक्सीजन मैनेज कर रहा है। इन सच ए सर्कमस्टेंसेस एंड हाई राइज ऑफ पैंडेमिक, you are talking of this kind of thing. You must question, as we question the government. They have failed right from day one to control or to manage not only pandemic but also the population who have coming from other places. They were in the denial mode. Even today they are in the denial mode. They have BJP can hold a virtual rally costing 200 crores. But the chief minister who belonged to BJP, he said that we don't have money to call people from outside, to call the migrant labor, to manage the problem of migrant labor. What this kind of things reflects? It is sheer failure of the government, which is reflected in these bad times, and therefore we demand and say that the election must wait, and elections should not be held at the cost of life of the people, particularly the poor people of Bihar who are suffering in this government. So we must.
Okay, Ajay Alok wants to respond to you. Ajay Alok, yes.
First of all, my friend, I guess he doesn't understand the meaning of pandemic, because flood and pandemic are not the same thing.
You are such
Please,
a
don't
shameless
interfere.
guy.
Have some decency.
One minute,
Who's
Mr.
shameless?
Nawal Kishore,
Who's
let him
shameless?
answer.
Very much evident.
You must
Miss-
explain
Miss-
why the government.
It's very much evident. Who is
Mr.
shameless?
Nawal Kishore, no yelling, please. Mr. Nawal Kishore, 1 minute, please. I'm not going to have any yelling on this show. Mr. Nawal Kishore, you are new to Mirror Now. I think you don't know, but we don't do any yelling on Mirror Now debates. Please listen to him. Let him finish. I will give you your chance after that to respond. Yes, Ajay Alok.
Yeah, so I was telling that there is a difference between pandemic and floods, and right now we are managing both. My chief, and second thing, he said the chief minister is from BJP. No, sir. The chief minister is from JDU, Janata Dal United. He is not from BJP. And we have not spent 200 crores. Please, calm down. Why are you getting agitated? Calm down.
Don't get agitated. There's no point. I know you guys are habitual bhagoda. Like your leader, he's a habitual bhagoda. The whole party is a habitual bhagoda. You want to run away from something, run away. But because of you being a bhagoda, election commission is not going to listen to you and not to me. This election commission is going to decide.
You are talking hopeless. You respond to the question of failure.
Gentlemen, please.
Don't teach us meaning of flood and meaning of corona. Everybody knows that.
Okay. He'll respond. He will. Okay. Mr. Dr. Nawal Kishore, He will respond to the allegation of failure. Now let him finish his point. You don't even know whether he will respond to that or not. Let's listen to him, please. One by one. No yelling, please.
Mr. Nawal Kishore, do you know?
Yeah, Ajay, ALOK.
Do you know 3 of your RJD leaders who were in close contact with Mr. Tejasvi Yadav for the last 15 days, they have died yesterday, day before yesterday? One of them is an MLA's husband. One of them was your MLA candidate. And we have been asking Mr. Tejasvi Yadav to get himself tested. He's not getting himself tested. And yesterday he took away a cavalcade of 50 cars going all the way to Darbhanga and then to Madhubani to collect property papers. To collect property papers, I'm again saying, which was today run by all the local TV channels, and the video went viral. So is this the time to collect property papers? Is this the kinds of sensitivity you have? Now you are teaching us who is managing COVID, the government who is fighting flood, providing relief to the people, deploying SDRF, NDRF, creating relief camps, supplying food, thinking in terms of malaria, dengue, what the professor was telling us. We are all everything in mind. You were telling us what happened in Muzaffarpur. Yes, we also know what happened in Muzaffarpur last year. What happened this year? In record time of 9 months, we developed 150-bedded dedicated AES hospital in Muzaffarpur. And what was the death this year? Not even 10, not even in double digit. So we understand our responsibility, and that's why people love us. And that's why we are getting re-elected. You never understood your responsibility. You were always a habitual bhagoda. Your leader is still a habitual bhagoda. And that's why you want to run away. Now see, this election is not going to be decided by Nitish Kumar or going to be decided by RJD or BJP. Election happens or it doesn't happen. It is going to be decided by the Election Commission. Now, if you're so much afraid of elections, why you are also started planning that we are also going to hold virtual rally? Who does ask you? You can't have both the things saying. At one time you say you don't want to have election. Other time you start taking out procession, moving here and there, risking people's life. Third time you will start holding virtual rallies. Stick to one point. Where you are sticking to. This is your problem. You have never been consistent. You don't have any sense of responsibility.
Now let me get a response from him. Now let me get a response from Nawal Kishore. Yes.
You know, JDU morality is that they have used all political ideology in this country from left to right to the center for power. The sheer shamelessness has been recognized not only by people of Bihar but in the observation of Supreme Court that this government is not only shameless, it has failed on one front. You look at the observation of Supreme Court. What is talking? You know, you are talking of death of one person. We are talking of every death which is taking place at the time of Corona. And you are talking of flood. You look at the failure. Every time the flood comes, it is regular income for the JDU. Right from the inception they have come into power, they have failed on managing water. Every day they are waiting for floods. And flood management, the relief fund is coming and they are making money. Who do not know that? What have you done on the front of flood management in past 1 decade and a half? You are talking of Nitish Kumar. Nitish Kumar have been lying every time. He is, whenever pandemic occurs, whenever problem comes, whether it was Muzaffarpur case, whether it was Muzaffarpur shelter home case, whether it was every time he is absconding. And you are talking of leader of opposition Tejasvi Yadav is on the ground questioning your failure and helping the people in the time. You look at,
Tejasvi Yadav should also update himself. Mr. Nawal Kishore, you can always question the government. You don't need to go on ground. You don't need to go on ground to go question the government. You also need to evolve with times. This is COVID era. Everybody is changing. We are all adapting to the digital future. The politicians also should do that now. Tomorrow you will say, but Mr. Tejasvi Yadav is leading from ground, campaigning, going to everybody's house. He can't go to everybody's house, Mr. Nawal Kishore. That's not where we are living. We all have to update ourselves and align our work style differently. So then your policies also have to change accordingly. Very quickly, let me see if I can go across to MANISHA PRIYAM. Unfortunately, we've had a bad technology round of glitches with her connection. MANISHA PRIYAM, if you can hear me, good evening. The question to you was, do you think October is a good time for Bihar to go into elections? Can we handle that?
So, Tanvi, I'm extremely sorry. I haven't heard my co-panelists, my peers, their points of view. So what I say right now will be from what I understand from the ground. I have been constantly in touch, interviewing labor over 15 districts. And I can tell you one thing, that the show must go on in Bihar. Bihar is a state that faces crisis. It has floods in these months. Nitish Kumar earned his label of good governance largely because he handled the floods very well. Now the point right now is that if there is a pandemic and if there is an election, it doesn't mean that the people's will not be taken into account. Remember, the biggest crisis right now is that nearly 30 million estimated workers have gone back home. The government's estimates are 10 million workers, of which the largest proportion is in Bihar. A Hindustan Times op-ed that I have written tells you that these people who have gone back don't even have a patch of land to work on. They've gone back home. We don't know what difficulties they are facing. And it is for the government, chosen, elected government, to handle it in normal times and abnormal both. You cannot today say that situation is abnormal and therefore what is abnormal about the situation? You have to think of the means. The Election Commission, I hope Dr. SY Quraishi is right here, can give the right advice on how things can be carried on. And my point right now is that two things need to be done. Political parties cannot claim that XYZ is my leader and he is supreme and he is God, or XYZ is my leader and he is supreme, he is God. People in Bihar are suffering. Coronavirus is a big threat today. The phone calls I'm getting from people who have affiliations across political parties. And I think Bihar needs to understand that citizen voice, a land that has given birth to a leader like Jayaprakash Narayan, needs to realize Lok Shakti. And Lok Shakti talks about people's voice. What is people's voice telling us? The poorest of this world in largest numbers reside in the state of Bihar. And that state keeps telling us, this is the leader, this is the leader. No. Where is the people's issue? Where is the people's agenda? Can political parties say, okay, on one side we will contest elections, on another side we will construct the world's largest corona hospital in Bihar? I never see a constructive agenda coming. I find that the land of the poorest people of this country, indeed of this world, as if elections are something where people's power has to be milked for some profit or benefit. Please stop this. Start ruling in public interest, public benefit. Tell us where your 10,000 bed corona hospitals are. If you don't have the resources, come back and ask the center. That center, please provide us the resources. Center will provide the resources. You are in alliance with the center. Do that. And this is a time of electioneering, yes, but electioneering in public purpose. Remember, Bihar has had elections after earthquakes, after floods, and they have been very disastrous. Very disastrous. People sitting here in Delhi do not have an idea of what floods mean in Bihar. Thousands lose their lives. And we have just barely seen the migrant workers walk back. Let me conclude by saying, Tanvi, that from one listening post where the UP border ends and Bihar border begins, I was doing interviews, I was talking to labor. One labor had walked 10 days and nights from Tamil Nadu. And I was told, Didi, iska pav to phatke cheethada ho gaya hai. Now, cheethada is a word used for torn rag. The human condition can degrade to such a level, then we need to understand that democracy needs to respond to the voice of the people, to the citizenry. Power is not a tangential resource.
Okay.
Power is a way of constituting government for the people. It must be done.
I completely agree with you, and the voice of the people must be heard. They must be given a chance to judge governance and this government's performance basis all of the issues that you've elicited. But can that come at the risk of their own health when the government has shown repeatedly that they're not ready? And none of these states have been ready. Wherever we've seen lesser number of cases in the first 2 months, they have now been caught exposed because they have not prepared and not anticipated this kind of a rise post the unlocking of cases. This is a conversation which will continue. I'm going to thank all of our panelists for joining us right now. But as in the run-up to Bihar election, as EC works on a protocol, as various parties make their point clear to the Election Commission as well, we'll talk a lot more about it. I just want to quickly tell you that we did do an poll on this on social media as well, and overwhelmingly there the response was that no, Bihar should not hold elections at this point of time. Quick break. Lots more on the other side on Urban Debate at 9 p.m. Stay with me.